Here we are once again. I actually lost track of the number of requests I received from overseas to talk about the Rossler. I'm not sure that that's the correct pronunciation. It's made in Austria, so it's Österreich, if I get that part correct. It says Austria on the barrel. Anyway, this is a unique gun. You don't see many of them on this side of the ocean. It's a fully modern rifle, but they still retained a walnut stock, and the action is quite strong, I think. I fired this one, maybe 100 rounds. It's 30-06. So I assume it's very popular in Austria, maybe Germany, and I'm not sure what the price is, but they did some really intelligent things. And it says Titan 6. So when I see Titan 6, I'm thinking maybe there was a Titan 1 or a Titan 2. I know that Fure made a rifle called the Titan as well, but it's quite different from this model. Anyway, the unique features of this rifle, which are worth mentioning and looking at, mainly have to do with the materials. So the first thing I'll draw to your attention is the receiver is a very lightweight aluminum. I would have to say it's one of the lightest receivers I've come across. I didn't weigh it or anything, partly because of the way this particular rifle is put together, but I'll explain that in a moment. So the bolt, you can see it's not like a Mauser, very short bolt lift, and I'm actually working on a device to measure the amount of pressure it takes to lift a bolt handle. So this distance is obviously a lot shorter than if we lifted this bolt and had more of an arc. And there are different measurements, 60 degrees, 90 degrees, and so on. But you can gather that right now I cock the striker, so it actually takes some force. Now I maybe make it look easy, but just watch videos or watch your friends. They'll do this thing. They'll put their thumb on the top of the action, and in some of the more modern rifles it's difficult because they didn't engineer the cams properly. Actually, it's not a bad idea to have two cams. I think the Ruger American is one of the best solutions to that shallow arc problem, if it is a problem. Anyway, it's not that difficult to measure this stuff, so I'm going to do that. And then just provide a table so people can look at what they're getting into. And the only time it becomes significant is if you're in a hurry and you're reloading, and you go to reload and your hands are frozen or you're in gloves. And then what happens is, unless you're thinking about it, you turn the entire rifle before the bolt opens, or it turns while you're opening the bolt. So ease of bolt lift is significant, but with modern scopes you want to have as much clearance as you can. Anyway, so Rossler Titan 6 aluminum receiver, and very lightweight. And then this whole assembly, I took out all the screws just so you don't have to watch me fumbling with screws, is some kind of polymer. And actually even this assembly is very light. It's not cracked. You know, a lot of times the Steyr Mannlichers will crack back here, on this spot especially, but this looks to be a pretty tough, rigid polymer assembly. And then this is the magazine, so that, you know, that looks okay. It's retained in here, so there must be springs, so that's not bad. And then I'll just take the whole contraption apart. Typical trigger. I don't take triggers apart to study pins and bearings, and I pull the trigger, it goes bang. I assume that somebody studied it somewhere and it's safe and works. Now here's the cool thing that I actually can't show you on this gun, and this is what I was referring to earlier. So if you undo this Allen screw and this, or Allen bolt, or whatever you call them, this opens and you can remove this barrel. And I know you can from other models, but this one, I undid this and I undid this, and that bolt, that barrel is not going anywhere. I think somebody probably epoxied it in place. It's hard to know why, but I'm not running around switching barrels all the time. 30-06 is, for most purposes, all you need or more, and so I don't mind that. But I'm telling you that if you wanted to, you could get different barrels to fit in here, and if the bolt head was the same as a 30-06, like if it was a 6.5 by 55 or a 308, something like that in that family, not a Magnum and not a 223, then you wouldn't have to do anything except 2 bolts and pop this out, put the action back in the stock. So how does this thing lock? Well, obviously there's no strength in the receiver. The receiver is just holding parts in place, and it can be made out of aluminum. Frankly, it could be made out of a polymer, and I think one of these days we'll see an action that's completely polymer. And somebody was showing me a prototype of a bolt that was a polymer from here to here. It had minimal steel, and that made the bolt very light, and the bolt quite often is one of the heavier components in a rifle. So there's always this scheme to make rifles lighter and lighter. I'm not sure if it's sound reasoning, but it's kind of fun handling light rifles. Anyway, so these lugs, there are 6 of them. You can see 2 here, typical extractor ejector setup in here. You can see 2 more here, and then 2 more on the other side. Before filming, I took this bolt out, but this is, you have to really bear down on the trigger to get the bolt out, and I thought it's more meaningful for me to show you the bolt in place in the rifle. So when I'm going forward here and then locking, it didn't lock because I was pulling the trigger, but the lugs lock into the barrel. This is not uncommon. In fact, this idea was like 1902 or something like that. But these ideas come and go. It's reliable. All you then have to be sure of is that the shoulder on the barrel is properly supported by the action. So the action has a large bearing area on the shoulder of the barrel, so that on recoil the barrel doesn't eat its way through the action, because obviously the steel barrel is harder and stronger than the aluminum receiver. So I hope that is what you needed to see on these, and the people were asking me if this is a good rifle. You can see somebody was doing the usual glass bedding in there, and I mean, it looks like an okay job. I don't know. Anyway, so that's that. It assembles easily. Yeah, it's a fine rifle. The trigger is fine. The safety is fine. I'm not crazy about these alloy or aluminum receivers. This one I'm lucky. It's not scratched up, but once you scratch aluminum, they use hard anodizing, and they do their best with these different coatings. But you get a scratch in that, and you'll be fiddling around with a Sharpie or some kind of paints, and we've seen it all, or somebody spray painting with Rust-Oleum. Aluminum is not steel, and that's just how it is. So if you don't mind the aluminum, this might be the gun for you. It came with iron sights. People would usually want to know if it's accurate. Of course, it was fine. It was, easily capable of being a hunting rifle to 300 yards or further if you practice and put a good scope on it, and so on. So that is it. Rossler Titan 6, and you probably know, or no, I won't go in so easily because the magazine. You probably know more about it than I do, overseas especially, and they're not easy to find over here, but I found this and I share it with you, and if you're getting good service out of it, well, terrific. That's all that matters. I would give you price points, but I didn't research properly, and what I pay is always either way too much or way too little, so it's hard for me to go by what I pay just because of the gun community I deal with. Maybe I'll mention it another time. Thank you very much for watching, and please push that subscribe button or whatever it is that you have to do to subscribe. Thank you very much again. You take care out there.